So if you're listening to this, you're probably just as obsessed with Fantasy Premier League as we are,
And you're probably looking for an edge.
especially with this double game week coming up.
And who can forget about those blank game weeks just on the horizon?
Yeah, those are always a headache.
But hey, we've got you covered.
We're diving deep into a strategy video by an FPL expert.
This guy really knows his stuff,
He's breaking down everything.
from specific player recommendations to the best chip strategies.
He even looks at some of those risky moves that could really make or break your season.
That could really shake things up.
So yeah, buckle up. Let's get right into it.
What I found really interesting is that he jumps right into this big question hanging over all the Aston Villa players.
Oh,
I
yeah.
mean, they've got that double game week in 25,
Which is always tempting.
but then they blank in 29.
Yeah, it's a classic FPL dilemma.
Do you chase those double game week points knowing you'll have to deal with a blank later?
Or do you just, avoid the whole mess?
Exactly. And to make things even more complicated,
More complicated.
Watkins might not even be fit for that double game week.
Oh, right.
His fitness is a real question mark.
And that has huge implications for the other Villa assets.
Like Leon Bailey, for example.
Yeah.
Do you go all in on Bailey, hoping that Watkins is back for the double?
Or is that too much of a gamble?
Tough call,
So how does he suggest we navigate this whole Villa situation?
especially with our chips.
Yeah.
Well, he presents that kind of popular strategy that I think a lot of people are considering.
Yeah.
Wildcard in game week 30 to 32.
Mm-hmm.
Bench boost in that beautiful double game week 33.
Yeah.
Free hit in blank game week 34.
Makes sense.
And then triple captain in double game week 36.
I mean, that sounds like a pretty solid plan.
Especially if you still have all your chips left.
Yeah, I'm still holding on to all of mine.
But he does mention another option.
Oh, really?
Something called dead ending your team.
Dead ending?
I know it sounds a little drastic.
It does.
But basically, you load up on players who have a game in 29.
Even if they're not players you want long-term.
Exactly. You're basically sacrificing those weeks.
Just to set yourself up perfectly for those later double game weeks.
Exactly. And then you hit that wildcard button right after 29.
And bring in your A-team.
Yeah, your dream team.
I like that idea.
It's high risk, high reward, for sure.
So for those of us who maybe aren't feeling quite that adventurous,
The more risk-averse crowd,
what about the triple captainship?
well, for anyone who hasn't used theirs yet,
I'm in that camp
he actually suggests considering Mo Salah this week,
this week.
game week 25.
Really, even after that red card?
Yes, even with a red card.
That's bold.
It is, but, Salah is Salah.
That's true.
He's still got massive points potential.
I guess that makes sense.
Plus, the red card doesn't even affect the assistant managership.
Oh, that's right.
So if you activated that, you don't have to worry.
I know a lot of people were stressing about that.
Yeah, it only takes into account the team's performance, not the manager's actions.
Okay, good to know.
So you can breathe a sigh of relief if you were worried about that.
Definitely. Okay, so let's talk about a player who's been causing quite a stir in the FPL community.
Oh, yeah.
Alexander Isak.
Love him or hate him. He's a hot topic right now.
He's got some tough fixtures on the horizon.
Yeah, and of course he blanks in 29.
I mean, that's just adding insult to injury.
A lot of managers are thinking about selling him.
Yeah, I've seen a lot of that chatter online.
But this expert, he really urges caution.
He does.
Think carefully before you hit that sell button.
I mean, he has been on fire this season.
It's true.
Even against tough teams like Arsenal and Liverpool.
Yeah, he's proven he can score against anyone.
So selling him now would be a real blow to your team value.
Not to mention the potential points you'd be missing out on.
So what does he recommend?
He's hesitant to sell him himself.
Really?
He even thinks holding on to him
While everyone else is panicking.
could be a sneaky way to climb the rankings.
Ooh, I like that.
Sometimes you gotta zig when everyone else is zagging.
And that can really pay off in FPL.
Absolutely. All right, so let's move on to the scout selection picks for this game week.
Always interesting to see what those guys are up to.
Well, this week they've gone all in.
All in.
Triple Aston Villa
Wow.
and triple Liverpool.
That's a bold strategy, Cotton.
It is.
Especially with that Villa blank looming.
Yeah, they must be pretty confident in those teams.
So who are their picks specifically?
Well, they've gone with Virgil van Dijk over Trent Alexander-Arnold.
Interesting.
Maybe they're worried about Trent's minutes after that injury.
Could be.
They've also got Cody Gakpo in there.
He seems to be settling in well at Liverpool.
Yeah, he's starting to look like a real threat.
Okay, so let's see who's been flying off the shelves in the transfer market this week.
Any surprises on the most bought list?
Well, the one that really jumped out at me is Bruno Fernandes.
Bruno Fernandes,
He's at the top of the list.
despite how he's been playing lately.
I know, I was surprised too.
It seems like a lot of managers are still holding on to hope.
I guess they're hoping those double game weeks will revive him.
Or maybe they're just afraid of selling him low.
And missing out on a potential resurgence?
Who knows, but it's definitely a gamble.
Okay, so what about the other players making waves in the market?
We're seeing a lot of Leon Bailey transfers.
Makes sense with that double game week.
Kieran Dewsbury-Hall's another popular pick.
Yeah, he's been in great form.
And Cody Gakpo's also being snapped up.
Seems like people are really buying into his potential at Liverpool.
Now, on the flip side,
The most sold list.
yeah, who are managers getting rid of?
Well, Marcus Rashford is actually the top name there.
Oh, wow, really?
Yeah, which is a bit surprising given his form.
You'd think people would be holding on to him.
You would, but I guess some managers are worried about his price dropping.
And they're looking to cash in while they still can.
That's FPL for you, always thinking a few steps ahead.
Always trying to stay ahead of the curve.
All right, so let's talk market odds for Game Week 25.
What are the bookies telling us?
Well, despite their recent defensive wobbles
Arsenal are still the favorites for a clean sheet this week.
against Leicester,
Yeah, I know it might seem counterintuitive,
it does.
but Leicester haven't been great lately.
And Arsenal will be desperate to bounce back after that loss to Everton.
They'll be looking to make a statement.
Okay, so Liverpool at Anfield against Wolves.
They're the second favorites for a clean sheet,
Interesting.
and they've got the highest projected goals for the week,
So their attacking assets are looking pretty tasty right now.
especially Salah and Gakpo.
And let's not forget about Bournemouth.
Oh, yeah?
Their projected goals are pretty high, too.
Yeah, they're playing Southampton, who are currently in last place.
So their midfielders could be some nice differentials.
Yeah, if you're looking to gain an edge in your mini league.
Exactly. All right, so we had a listener question about choosing between three midfielders.
Oh, yeah, this is a tough one.
Brennan Johnson, Solly March, or Eberechi Eze.
They're all in that kind of £5-6 million price range.
So it's a tough call.
It is, but the expert breaks down their stats to help us out.
Okay, so what does he say?
Well, he looks at their expected goals.
XG.
And on the surface, March actually has the highest overall XG.
Interesting.
But he points out that a lot of that is because of penalties.
So we need to look at the non-penalty XG to get a more accurate picture.
Exactly. And when you do that, Johnson actually comes out on top.
Really?
Yeah, he also has the best minutes per XG.
So he's scoring efficiently.
Exactly. Doing more with the chances he's getting.
Okay, so based on those stats, Johnson looks like the best pick.
Yeah, the expert agrees. He ranks them Johnson, then March, and then Isak.
Okay, so if you're looking for a midfielder in that price range, Johnson seems like the way to go.
Based on the numbers, at least.
But of course, FPL is full of surprises.
Right. You never know what's going to happen.
Okay, so before we move on, let's talk a little bit more about Arsenal's defensive struggles.
It's been a bit of a concern lately.
Yeah, they're a team that a lot of FPL managers have invested heavily in.
So their recent dip in form is definitely a worry.
The expert makes a really interesting point about how Gabriel Jesus' absence is impacting their defense.
And it goes beyond just missing his goals.
Exactly. It's his work rate, his pressing ability.
Yeah, he was a key part of their defensive solidity.
He covered more distance per game than any other Arsenal player.
I didn't realize that.
His pressing was relentless.
And it forced turnovers high up the pitch.
Which made it so difficult for opponents to build attacks.
Now without him, teams are finding it easier to play through Arsenal's press.
And create chances.
It's a definite concern for anyone with Arsenal defenders in their FPL team.
All right, so let's shift gears and look at the overall market trends for Game Week 25.
What are the big takeaways from the market odds?
Well, even with their recent defensive woes,
Arsenal are still favored for a clean sheet against Leicester.
I guess it makes sense.
Leicester hasn't been in great form lately.
And Arsenal will be hungry for a win.
Definitely, they'll be looking to make a statement.
What about Liverpool?
Home game against Wolves.
Yeah.
They're the second favorites for a clean sheet,
Okay.
and they've got the highest projected goals of any team this week.
So their attacking assets are looking very, very tempting.
Oh, yeah.
Especially Salah and Gakpo.
And, of course, we can't forget about Bournemouth.
Right. You mentioned their projected goals were pretty high.
Yeah, their matchup against Southampton is very favorable.
Well, if you're looking for some differentials.
Their midfielders could be a good shout.
Okay, let's dive into the scout selection picks for this game week.
You mentioned they went with a pretty bold strategy.
Yeah, triple stack on both Aston Villa and Liverpool.
It's a lot of faith in those two teams.
It is. What's the thinking there?
Well, for Aston Villa, they've gone with Emiliano Martinez,
Okay,
Lucas Digne,
makes sense.
and Ollie Watkins.
Wow, so they're clearly banking on him being fit.
It seems that way.
And for Liverpool, they've got Alisson,
Yeah.
Virgil van Dijk. Interesting they chose him over Trent.
Yep, and Cody Gakpo.
So they're really backing him to continue his good form.
Okay, let's see who's been busy in the transfer market this week.
Any big surprises on the most bought list?
Well, the one that really stood out to me,
Yeah.
Bruno Fernandes at the top of the list.
I know it's a head-scratcher.
Despite his recent struggles.
People are still holding on or even bringing him in.
I guess they're hoping those double game weeks will spark something.
Or maybe they just don't want to sell him low.
Yeah, that's always a consideration.
What about the other players being brought in?
We're seeing a lot of Leon Bailey transfers.
Makes sense with that double game week.
Kieran Dewsbury-Hall is another popular pick.
Yeah, he's been great for him.
And Cody Gakpo is also being snapped up.
Seems like people are really buying into his potential at Liverpool.
Now, on the other side, Who are managers getting rid of?
Well, Anthony Gordon is at the top of the most sold list.
No surprise there.
With his move to Newcastle and the uncertainty surrounding his playing time.
Yeah, it's understandable why people are selling.
We're also seeing a lot of Amadou Onana transfers out.
His price has been dropping.
Alexander Isak is another one.
People are worried about his fixtures and that blank game week.
Yeah, it's a tough call whether to hold or sell him.
Trent Alexander-Arnold is also being sold by a lot of managers.
I guess some people are concerned about his minutes after that injury.
And then we've got Patrick Bamford.
He hasn't really lived up to expectations this season.
And finally, Ollie Watkins is also among the most sold players.
With his injury concerns and the uncertainty over his double game week availability.
Yeah, a lot of managers are jumping ship.
Okay, so we've covered a lot of ground here.
Player picks, chip strategy.
Market trends.
The whole 9 yards.
But let's dive into the expert's own team and what transfers he's considering for game week 25.
Always interesting to see what the experts are doing with their own teams.
Right, because they're playing the game too.
They're not just talking about it.
So what's his current lineup?
Well, he's running with a 4-5-1 formation.
Okay.
Raya in goal.
Solid choice.
Backline of Trippier, Tarkowski, Botman, and Bueno.
That's a pretty strong defense.
Midfield of Fernandes, Salah, Palmer, Sinisterra, and Mitoma.
Good mix of premium and budget options there.
And then Isak leading the line.
So he's holding on to Isak for now.
It seems like it.
And he has one free transfer this week, right?
Yep, and $0.3 million in the bank.
So what's he thinking of doing?
Well, he's narrowed it down to 2 options.
Okay, lay him on me.
Option 1 is a straightforward defensive move.
Okay.
Ben Davies to Axel Disasi.
That makes sense.
Tottenham's defense has been a bit shaky.
And Disasi has potential for clean sheets.
Exactly.
So that's a pretty safe, sensible move.
Now, option 2 is a bit more daring.
Oh.
And it involves taking a -4 hit.
A hit. Okay, I'm listening.
Tosin Adarabio to Gabriel.
Double Arsenal defense.
And Bruno Fernandes to Leandro Trossard.
Wow. Okay, that's a big swing.
It is. He's really going for it.
What's the logic there?
Well, he's tempted by the potential of doubling up on Arsenal's defense.
Even though they've been a bit suspect lately?
Yeah, but he thinks they could tighten up against Leicester.
And Trossard could thrive with Jesus and Iketo out.
Exactly. He sees him as a potential bargain.
It's a high-risk, high-reward move, for sure.
If it pays off, it could be a masterstroke.
But if it backfires...
It could be disastrous.
I guess that's the beauty of FPL.
Always a gamble.
Always keeps you on your toes.
So, what do you think?
Which move should he make?
Well, he's still weighing the pros and cons.
And he encourages viewers to do the same.
It's a good reminder that there's no right or wrong answer in FPL.
What works for one manager might not work for another.
It's all about considering your own team's needs.
Your risk tolerance.
And ultimately your gut feeling.
All right, so we've talked about his transfer dilemmas.
But there's one more big decision he's facing.
Oh, right, the Alexander Isak conundrum.
Yeah, to sell or not to sell, that is the question.
He's got those tough fixtures coming up.
And of course that blank in 29.
It's a tough one.
He's been such a good asset this season.
Scoring goals for fun.
Yeah, and he's proven he can score against anyone.
So selling him now would be a real blow to your team value.
And you'd be taking a big hit.
So what does he recommend?
Well, he's hesitant to sell him himself.
Really?
He even acknowledges that selling him now would mean taking a big financial hit.
So he's willing to write it out.
Yeah, he thinks holding on to Isak while others are selling.
Could be a great way to climb the rankings. I like that.
Sometimes the best moves are the ones that go against the grain.
The contrarian approach.
Exactly.
So are you holding on to Isak?
I'm still undecided.
It's a tough call.
It is, but I think the expert has given us some food for thought.
Definitely. Yeah, it really is a tough decision, isn't it?
It is. You know, you look at those fixtures and you just think,
oh, no.
But then you remember how well he's been playing?
I know. It's like a constant battle in your mind.
Weighing up the risks and the rewards.
Exactly. So you mentioned earlier that a listener had a question about choosing between 3 midfielders.
Oh, yeah.
This is one that a lot of people are probably struggling with. Brennan Johnson, Solly March, or Ebereki Eze.
All in that kind of like sweet spot for midfielders?
Yeah, twice-wise, they're all pretty tempting.
They are, and they all have their strengths.
So how do you choose?
Well, the expert dives into their underlying stats.
Okay.
Specifically their expected goals, or XG.
Right, XG is always a good indicator of future potential.
It is, and when you look at just the raw XG, March actually has the highest.
Interesting.
But here's the thing.
What's that?
A big chunk of that is coming from penalties.
Ah, so we need to look at the non-penalty XG to get a more accurate picture.
Exactly. We want to see who's creating those chances from open play.
Right, not just relying on spot eggs.
And when you look at the non-penalty XG, Chance actually comes out on top.
Really?
Yeah, and not only that, he also has the best minutes per XG.
So he's finding the net more efficiently than the other two?
Basically, yeah, he's making the most of his opportunities.
Okay, so Johnson sounds like the pick then.
Well, the expert seems to think so.
What's his verdict?
He ranks them Johnson first, then March, and then Eze.
So there you have it, folks. If you're looking for a midfielder in that price range.
Johnson seems like the way to go.
At least based on the numbers.
Right, but As we all know, FPL's a fickle beast.
Oh yeah, those stats can only tell you so much.
Exactly. You got to trust your gut sometimes.
Okay, so let's circle back to Arsenal's defensive woes for a moment.
Yeah, I think it's worth digging a little deeper into this.
Because it's a major concern for a lot of FPL managers.
Absolutely, especially those who have doubled up on their defense.
The expert made a really interesting point about how Gabriel Jesus' absence is impacting their entire defensive structure.
It's not just about losing his goals.
Exactly, it's about losing that first line of defense.
His work rate was incredible.
Always chasing down defenders, forcing those turnovers high up the pitch.
Yeah, the expert said he covered more distance per game than any other Arsenal player.
That's insane.
It is, and it shows how important he was to their pressing game.
So without him, their press isn't as effective.
Which means teams are finding it easier to break them down.
And create chances.
It's definitely something to consider if you're thinking about bringing in Arsenal defenders.
Or even if you're just holding on to the ones you have.
Their clean sheet potential might not be what it once was.
It's a good reminder that FPL isn't just about individual player stats.
It's about understanding the bigger picture.
The tactics, the team dynamics.
How different players influence each other.
Okay, so let's shift our focus to the market odds for Game Week 25.
What are the bookies telling us?
Well, despite their recent defensive struggles,
Arsenal are still the favorites for a clean sheet.
this week against Leicester.
Yeah, I know it might seem strange.
It does.
But Leicester haven't been in great form lately.
And Arsenal will be desperate to bounce back from that Everton defeat.
They'll be looking to make a statement.
Okay, so what about Liverpool at Anfield against Wolves?
They're the second favorites for a clean sheet.
Oh, right.
And get this.
What?
They have the highest projected goals of any team this week.
Wow, so their attacking players are looking really attractive?
Oh yeah, especially if you're thinking about captaining Salah.
Like the experts suggested.
Bold move, but it could pay off big time.
Okay, so we talked about Bournemouth's high projected goals earlier.
Right, they're playing Southampton, who are rock bottom.
So it could be a goal fest?
Potentially, which is why their midfielders are being touted as good differentials.
Yeah, if you're looking to gain an edge in your mini leagues.
Okay, let's talk about those scout selection picks again.
I'm still trying to process that triple stack on both Aston Villa and Liverpool.
It's a lot to take in.
It is. So for Aston Villa, they've gone with Martinez, Digno, and Watkins.
Yeah, they're clearly not worried about Watkins' fitness.
Or they're just hoping for the best.
And for Liverpool, it's Alisson, Van Dijk, and Gakpo.
Interesting, they went with Van Dijk over Trent.
Yeah, maybe they're concerned about Trent's minutes.
After that injury.
Or maybe they just think Van Dijk is a better option this week.
Who knows, but it's definitely a talking point.
All right, let's move on to the transfer market.
What do we got?
Well, the most bought player this week is
Drum roll, please.
Bruno Fernandes.
Bruno Fernandes, really?
Despite his recent form,
People are still flocking to bring him in.
I guess they're hoping for a resurgence.
Or maybe they're just scared of selling him low.
And missing out if he does turn things around.
It's a gamble, that's for sure.
Okay, so other than Bruno, who else is being brought in?
Liam Bailey is a popular pick.
Makes sense with that double game week.
Kieran Dewsbury Hall is another one.
Yeah, he's been in great form.
And Cody Gakpo is also being snapped up.
People are really buying into his potential at Liverpool.
Okay, so who are managers getting rid of?
Well, at the top of the most sold list, we have Anthony Gordon.
No surprise there.
With his move to Newcastle and the uncertainty surrounding his playing time,
Yeah, it's understandable why people are selling.
we're also seeing a lot of Amadou Onana transfers out.
His price has been dropping.
Alexander Isak is another popular sell.
People are worried about his fixtures and that blank game week.
Yeah, it's a tough one.
Trent Alexander-Arnold was also being sold. Some people are concerned about his minutes.
Then we've got Patrick Bamford.
Not really firing on all cylinders.
And finally, Ollie Watkins is also among the most sold.
With those injury concerns and the double game week uncertainty.
A lot of managers are jumping ship.
Okay, so let's recap the chip strategies for the rest of the season.
The popular approach is wildcard between game weeks 30 and 32, bench boost in double game week 33,
Okay.
free hit in blank game week 34,
Right.
and triple captain in double game week 36.
That sounds like a solid plan.
It is. It's designed to maximize your points in those crucial double game weeks.
But there is another option, right?
Yeah, the more daring approach.
A dead-ending strategy.
Exactly. So you basically load up on players who have a game in 29,
Even if you don't want them long-term.
and then you wildcard straight after.
To bring in your ideal squad.
It's high risk, high reward.
If you get it right, you could be laughing.
But if you get it wrong,
It could be a disaster. So it's all about finding what works for you
what suits your risk tolerance?
and your overall FPL goals.
Exactly. There's no right or wrong answer.
And for those who are still holding on to their triple captain,
Remember the expert's advice.
Captain Mo Salah this week.
Even with the red card.
He believes Salah's points potential is just too good to ignore.
And the red card doesn't affect the assistant managership.
It's a bold move.
But fortune favors the brave.
All right, so let's take a look at the expert's own team.
What's he cooking up for Game Week 25?
Well, he's currently running a 4-5-1 formation.
Classic.
Riot in goal.
Solid choice.
Trippier, Tarkowski, Botman, and Bueno in defense.
That's a strong back one.
Fernandez, Palmer, Sinistera, and Mitoma in midfield.
Good balance there.
And Isak up top.
So he's holding on to him for now.
It seems that way, and he has one free transfer, right?
Yep, and $0.3 million in the bank.
So what's he thinking of doing?
He's got two options.
Hit me.
Option one is a safe defensive move, Ben Davies to Axel Disasi.
Makes sense.
Tottenham's defense has been a bit iffy.
And Disasi has clean sheet potential.
Exactly.
Now option 2 is a bit more adventurous.
Involves taking a -4 hit.
Oh, a hit. Okay, tell me more.
Tosin Edarabio to Gabriel.
Double Arsenal defense.
And Bruno Fernandes to Leandro Trossard.
Wow, so he's really going for it.
He is.
What's the thinking there?
Well, he's tempted by the potential upside of Trossard.
With Jesus and Nikedia out.
Yeah, he could really thrive.
But it's a risky move.
No doubt about it.
Especially with Arsenal's defense being so shaky lately.
If it pays off, it could be a masterclass.
But if it goes wrong...
it could be a disaster.
I guess that's the beauty of FPL.
Always a gamble.
Always keeps you guessing.
So he's still weighing the pros and cons.
As we all are.
It's a good reminder that there's no right or wrong answer.
It's all about what feels right for you.
And your team.
Okay, so before we wrap up this section...
we need to talk about Alexander Isak.
Ah, yes, the big dilemma.
To sell or not to sell.
Tough fixtures coming up.
And that blank in 29.
It's a real head-scratcher.
But the expert is hesitant to sell.
Yeah.
He believes Isak's quality is undeniable.
He's been scoring goals for fun.
Exactly, and he's proven he can do it against anyone.
So selling him now would mean taking a big hit.
Both in terms of team value
and potential points.
So what does he suggest?
Well, he thinks holding on to Isak,
while everyone else is panicking,
could be a massive differential.
And a great way to climb the rankings.
So he's advocating for the contrarian approach.
Sometimes you gotta zig when everyone else is zagging.
That's how you make up ground.
Exactly. So it comes down to your own assessment of Isak.
And your willingness to take a risk.
But the expert seems to think he's worth holding on to.
Interesting.
It's definitely food for thought.
Okay, so we've covered a lot in this section.
Player picks, chip strategies,
market trends,
and some tough decisions.
But ultimately, it's all about applying this knowledge to your own team.
And making the choices that you believe will lead to FPL glory.
So, as tinkering with your team this week,
remember everything we've discussed.
And make the moves that feel right for you.
Because there's no one-size-fits-all approach.
It's all about finding what works for you.
And enjoying the ride.
And you know, even when you make those decisions and you feel good about them,
there's always that little bit of doubt.
Yeah, like, did I make the right call?
Especially when you see other people doing something completely different.
Right. It's like, oh no, maybe I should have done that.
But you know what? Even the experts don't always get it right.
That's true. They're just like us.
They make mistakes. They second-guess themselves.
And sometimes they just have to trust their gut.
That's a big part of FPL intuition.
Absolutely. So for anyone listening out there
who's feeling a little overwhelmed with all the options.
Yeah, it can be a lot to take in.
Just remember to focus on your own team.
Your own goals.
And what you feel comfortable with.
There's no magic formula.
No one-size-fits-all approach.
So as we wrap up this deep dive into FPL strategy...
what are some key takeaways you want listeners to remember?
Well, first of all, that double game week might seem like a dream.
Oh, yeah, all those juicy points.
But don't get too caught up in the hype.
Because those blank game weeks are lurking right around the corner.
So plan ahead, people.
Don't chase points and end up with a team full of blanks.
Yeah, that's a recipe for disaster.
Also, think carefully about your chip strategy.
Are you going to play it safe and follow the crowd?
Or are you going to go rogue?
Maybe try something a little different?
Like dead-ending your team for game week 29.
It's a risky move.
But it could pay off big time.
And most importantly, don't be afraid to be different.
If you believe in a certain player or a certain strategy,
go for it.
Don't let the fear of missing out dictate your decisions.
Trust your gut and have fun.
Because at the end of the day, that's what FPL is all about.
Absolutely. So as you're making those final decisions for Game Week 25
and beyond,
remember everything we've discussed today.
Think about your team's strengths and weaknesses.
Weigh the risks and the rewards.
And trust your instincts.
And most importantly, enjoy the ride.
Because FPL is a marathon, not a sprint.
So buckle up. It's going to be a wild one.
We hope this deep dive has given you the knowledge and the confidence to make those tough decisions.
And hopefully climb those ranks.
So until next time, good luck. May your arrows be green.
And may your captain deliver a haul.
Happy FPLing, everyone.
See you next time.